What's up, everyone? Security Unfiltered, Episode 5 here. What are we talking about today? I think we got a good one.
Yeah, we're going to talk about certificates and more specifically the ISC squared certificates. So the CISSP, CCSP, SSCP, Associate of ISC squared, all that good stuff.
And we're going with all those.
Well, there's different brackets. So might as well
Yeah,
touch upon where, a person can get, some value, right? Because not all people are going to have that 5 year experience that seems to be, a cornerstone of some of these certs.
yeah, that's true. How do you feel about that 5 years of experience? Do you think that it's like valuable for these certs to have that requirement? Does it make the cert more valuable to have then if they do have that requirement? What's your thoughts?
I think it's okay.
Yeah,
Maybe if it was 3 years, right, that'll be a happier medium. But you don't necessarily want people, getting a CISSP and coming into your environment and not having any experience with it, right? So
walking off the street with the CISSP.
yeah, that and that's one of the things that certificates have to balance, right? Whether or not you have the applicable skills and whether or not they put enough requirements in place so that you can actually say that that cert actually means something. And I think ISC Square kind of they have a good balance, right? Because in order to get your CISSP, you have to have 5 years, and generally you can kind of get it down to maybe four, right? With
Yeah,
some of those extra, things you can do, whether or not it's a degree or job experience or a different cert from one of the different other vendors. But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's tough, right? But I think it gives it a little bit more value than some of the other ones.
Which one did you start out with?
So I went for the CISSP. I waited till I had about 3 years of experience before I kind of pursued it because of that whole idea of like being an associate. I didn't want to deal with that. I'm not
Yeah,
I'm
I
not trying to
didn't
deal
either.
with that.
Yeah.
And so once I got a couple of years of experience, right, and I had been studying it for probably 2 years before I even planned on taking it, right. I was just you need to get familiar with the concepts anyway, right? So there's no reason why you couldn't actually learn the material from the CISSP, even though you may not take the test, in a year or two. Uh,
Mhm.
but yeah, you need to understand the fundamentals anyway, and the CISSP, you know, is there for that. So it was about 3 years that I was in security before I planned on taking it. I had a year knocked away, and it it worked out for the best.
Yeah. I mean, you had a bunch of certs like before that too. I mean, you were pretty well experienced and well versed. I just had my security plus. Um, but I think I started studying for my CCSP at like probably my 4 year mark of experience. And then I
Okay.
took it, I think I passed it like right when I got like 5 years of experience.
Yeah.
Um, But I mean, I went from Security Plus, which is very basic, to CCSP. But I mean, I think the reason why I didn't knock out any other certs in that time frame because there's probably like a 4 year gap in there where I just didn't get any certs or anything because I was so damn busy. I mean, I was so busy. I was getting my master's. I was working full time. There was no time.
I mean, the value is in the experience anyway. Well, most of the
Yeah,
value is. So if you actually have a position, then you can kind of use your search to be that validation of your skill set and what you do on a day to day basis, right?
yeah,
And most of my certs were kind of like that, except for my networking stuff. My networking stuff I did in order to try to get the position, but everything else I got was when I was doing it, and I was well versed in it, and it was kind of like, yeah, let's go ahead and put a check mark in this box and move on to the next path, right? So that helps when you can actually say that, hey, this certification is just validating that I am, what I say I am when it comes to this particular skill set.
right.
And so that's why I think that the way that they kind of had a CISSP set up, that it's beneficial in that way, because you still have things like, the Security Plus, right? And back in my day, CCNA security was one of those that was in that path still. I don't know if it's still today, right? I think
It's
that's
like
yeah.
I think it still exists, but I don't think it's by any means required by any stretch. Like
Yeah,
I don't think I've seen anyone that has it.
it's not going to be required. And Cisco has actually started branching out into other security type
Yeah.
certs specifically to kind of, get their mitts in that security market.
Got to get in on the hot stuff.
Yeah. CEH, right? That
Yep.
one kind of, entered that level, right? Like right after Security Plus, where do you go? Microsoft used to have an actual security certification a long time ago. That was a base level one, MCTS, MCP range, but
Mhm.
they done retired so many damn certs by now that that stuff is way in the archives.
I know
Yeah,
I know Microsoft has an Azure security engineer cert.
yeah. So
Something like
Azure,
that.
Azure security, well, the cloud stuff is a lot different and kind of changed the game. And so,
Yep.
today, you're probably going to go Security Plus, and just had a conversation. Somebody made a post about where they should go after getting Security Plus, and I was like, I mean, I would probably start looking at some of them baseline cloud certs, right?
Yep.
Just the ones that get you familiar with being like an administrator in the cloud, because those are kind of like replacing those old A plus MCP, MCTS type certs that Microsoft used to have. Just saying that you can actually be an administrator, system admin, but now you're doing it for the cloud, right? So you can get those cloud certifications that's baseline, and then go to the
Cloud
specialty.
Plus.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then go into that specialty for the cloud for their security, right? Because you're going to be securing cloud services, right? So you might as well learn a little bit about how to be a system admin in the cloud, and then go ahead and get that security. Now, some of us we just go right for the security because we have the background and the exposure working in IT for a while, right? So the skills are pretty transferable.
Yeah, so, getting back to the ISC squared certs, what so you have several of them. I only have one. So what's your study method or your study process look like?
Well, so for me, I usually research first what people are consider the best resources, right? The best written resources, books, right? So, I'll go to different sites, different forums, and see where others who had passed the exam kind of provide guidance on what they believe were the best materials. And you can go to Amazon and look at the reviews and stuff like that. But generally, it's finding out what the best resources are, right? Because if you're going to spend money, and now I have O'Reilly, right? So like all the training books I used to buy are already in there, right?
Oh,
So
wow.
instead of actually buying them book by book, and some of those books are 40, $50, right? You're just paying a monthly fee for O'Reilly, and those books are actually in there.
Hmm.
So in a lot of times, a lot of cases, I see that 60, 70, 80% of what I purchased are available in some of those, subscription based, services like that where you get access to books. Like all the AWS stuff in there, all the CCSP stuff in there, the CISSP stuff are in there. Yeah, so that's what I kind of use now. And then I'll look up some white papers for specific topics that I know to get covered, because what I notice with ISC squared and some of the other certs are they'll bring up specific scenarios that aren't covered in the book, right? And so the knowledge, if you actually go into the books and if you go into how they develop the test, they'll get information from different SMEs in a particular area, and those SMEs will actually have published articles about certain aspects that are going to be covered in the test. So,
Hmm.
for example, for ISAC, and when I was taking that for risk, there were a lot of articles that were published about risk management years before those scenarios were covered in the exam. So they actually do want you to kind of go back and look up old articles by some of the people who actually helped develop those tests or helped develop those study guides.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, what I typically do is I just grab, the best books that everyone recommends for the cert.
Yeah.
I grab them all and then I read them all. And I mean, that's like a huge bulk of the time frame of me studying for the cert. That's probably 6 to 8 months and I take a while to do certs. I mean, the higher level certs,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
so I mean, I'll read those books and I'll highlight everything in there that kind of sticks out, that seems like I need to remember it. And then from there, I'll do the practice questions in the book, and then I'll start looking up like practice question banks. Um, and I'll go ahead and supplement all of that with like a course on Udemy or Skillshare or something like that, right? Where they're discussing exactly that stuff. And as now at this point, when I'm going through the course, I'm creating a study guide. And that study guide can be on whatever platform you want. I like OneNote because I can get it on any device, right? Like I can create a note on my desktop, and then I need to go get on a train or a plane, or I'm going somewhere and I need, study materials with me. Um, I can go ahead and pull up my phone and go on my OneNote and look at my study guide and start, running through all those different things in my head and whatnot. Um, for me, I think finding a course that prepares you for the exam in the way that the exam asks the questions are most beneficial, because you really got to get used to how ISC squared asks a question and how they expect you to respond to it.
right.
And I know that that sounds like very basic or whatever, but when you take one of these exams, like you'll immediately recognize it, that like, oh, this isn't a CompTIA exam, or this isn't, the CEH or any other exam. I mean, like they're totally different in how they ask questions. And sometimes you'll even be confused as to what they're asking. I mean, like that's kind of how it is. And I have a friend that was on the board for, writing some of these exams. And he said that they did a really good job of getting out, probably 90% of the intentional trick questions, because there was a shit ton in there.
Yeah,
Um, but like that's my process. And then once I get my study guide down, um I think like once I get my initial draft of the study guide down, then I start looking at white papers, and I'll have a whole white paper section in my study guide of just the white papers that people recommend, or even in topics that I don't understand, like CCSP encryption was a huge topic.
yeah.
It's in every single domain. It should basically be its own domain almost, and um, it's in everything. And it was very difficult for me to understand it for a long time.
Hmm.
And so that was very challenging for me. So I grabbed white papers and I started reading them. I started watching videos on YouTube, you know, redoing and the data protection and encryption sections in these courses, rereading them several times. I mean, if you don't understand it to a level that you could explain it to another professional in the field, if you don't know it to that level, you're probably not ready in that domain. that's a good that's just a good rule of thumb in my opinion with these exams. What do you think?
Yeah, and so I would generally agree with you on that. That used to be, one of the main um, things I used to look for to, tell whether or not somebody was ready. But my lady, right, who just completed her Azure DevOps expert exam,
Oh wow.
so she's passed 4 Azure tests in the last 6 months. And if you put her on the spot and ask her to explain anything, I mean, it is tough. So some people are nervous, right, when they have to speak publicly, or so I would say,
Or
yeah,
you
you
put them
should,
on the spot,
yeah.
yeah.
So you should be able to explain it to somebody else, with the caveat that some people just get really nervous when they have to explain something to somebody else. But yeah, that's a good, that's a good, uh, barrier, or a good standard to set, right? If you can explain it to somebody else, right? Because that's the
Right.
idea about teaching, right? And when you know something well enough, you can teach it, and you should try to teach it, because that's how you really, you learn how to get right to the things that people, retain, right, from that
Yeah.
perspective. But yeah, like I said, we have very similar approaches from the perspective of, how we go about it. You have to have your notes, right? OneNote,
Yeah.
I kind of moved on from OneNote just because
You
I
graduated from it.
no, I just moved on from it because I find mind mapping software a little bit easier
Mm,
for me now. Because I can organize my stuff so much, whereas OneNote is more of a text like editor,
yeah.
and mind map it's a text editor as well, but you can create hierarchies right away. So if I
Yeah.
say encryption, right, I can create an encryption object, and then from there actually create child objects that kind of go right into the subject quickly. So what I'll do is I'll actually take notes from my Xmind and put them into OneNote, or OneNote to Xmind, or whatever mind mapping software you have, just because it's sometimes good to be able to see things visually, right?
Yeah.
People learn different ways, right? So you know to whether or not you're reading textbooks, some people have a very hard time reading a lot of text, right? Some of these books are 1,000 pages, right? And since I went to school and I had to read all day long, reading 1,000 pages to me, I'll go ahead and do. But somebody else, man, they
Man,
might say, "Hell no, I am not doing that." So that's
it's
where
brutal.
it can
I hate
be.
reading.
And you know what? Thank God I went into networking, because you're talking about getting used to dry material, right? There's not much more drier than learning how to do super netting and subnetting, right?
Dude,
Um,
I got my Security Plus, a while ago, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna do Network Plus. I got the Network Plus book. I couldn't make it past chapter one. I was like, fuck Network Plus. I am not doing this cert. I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter. Guess what? I got Google. I'll figure out the subnets with Google.
Yeah, it's too some
I'm not about to
material
figure this out.
way too dry, right? It can't keep your
I'd be falling
interest.
asleep.
Yeah,
I'd literally be falling asleep and I'd be at work. I'd
yeah.
be at work trying to study and I'd be falling asleep. My boss would walk by and goes, "What the fuck is wrong with you? Like, are you not getting enough sleep at night?" I'm like, "No, I'm sleeping 8 hours at night. It's this book." He goes, "Well, don't be reading that book at work then."
Say this book is real. Hey, you having trouble sleeping? Study for this exam. It will put you on your backside. But that's where the videos come in good, right? Now, you got the Udemy's,
It's
the
true.
plural site, the skill shares, the different outlets now, YouTube, right, where you can actually watch a video. Now, the problem with that is that you got to find somebody who's going to keep your attention as well. And then
Yeah.
it can be hard for those people who create videos, because I can tell you, as somebody who created videos before, create a 15-minute video, people only watch it for 4 minutes. You create a 5-minute video, people wanted it to be 10 minutes. Create a 10-minute video, and then people were telling you that something else was going on,
It's
right?
too short, too
Yeah.
long.
So
There's a
you
million different complaints with it. I mean, people
yeah,
complain about our podcast being too short.
yeah,
An hour-long podcast is too short. People
yeah.
want more. Like, guys, I'm trying to figure out how to do clips right now, all right? Like, we're
Yeah,
trying to shorten it for people that want shorter videos and this and that. But I mean, going into it, I think that this is a really interesting topic. Is how do you figure out what cert you want to get or what cert you should get? And so I can go over it for
yeah.
for how I do it, of course, and how you do it. But how did your wife decide that she wants to go and get all these Azure certs? Because I don't have any Azure certs. I also don't really have any will to get Azure certs probably this year.
Sure.
I really don't think I'll get any Azure certs this year. I might, I don't know. But why did she decide to get four Azure ones?
Well, she got free consulting from
Hmm.
Tech Jacks, myself. And so so she was in hey, sometimes you have to, help guide people in the right direction for them, because you
Yeah.
understand that, with what you're doing, and she's not ultra technical, right?
Yeah.
Um and she's not really into IT. If
Hmm.
she wasn't doing it for a job, then she
Gotcha.
would not, be interested in anything that's really technology past,
It's legit her job and not a passion.
yeah, it's not a passion, right? She got into it because she was in the cosmetology field, and that just didn't work out. And so she saw me when I was back in 2013, 2014. I was getting my Cisco stuff. I had all these routers and switches at home, and I had the lab. And she was like, "Well, hey, maybe I should get an IT because you got all the stuff, and you like to train people." And I was telling her, like, just so you know, I'm not giving you any answers to anything, right? Because I'm like, if I'm going to teach you this, what I'm going to teach you is how to find out the answers on your own. That's probably the best gift I can give you, is how to research, how to find
Right.
things out for yourself. Because I didn't want to be in a situation in which she's at work and she made it up, to a sysadmin or system engineer, and she has a problem. And the first thing she's thinking is like, text Derek and see if he can help me with this, right?
Right.
It was going to be, no, let me teach you how to Google, right? So we learned the quick search hacks for Google. I taught her that this is how you go into Google and you can put in really specific strings so that you can get the material you're looking for, right? All of that stuff. But she was doing Windows 7 stuff, supporting service desk, all that. And that's fine, right? But after a while, you start realizing that you're just going to be a ticket person and all you're going to do is answer tickets. So she was specializing in databases, SQL databases. And, SQL 20 years ago, 15 years ago, you can probably become a senior SQL database person and say that you got a nice 10, 15-year run ahead of you, right?
Yeah.
But the cloud was coming, right?
Yeah.
It was coming. And so what I was, guiding her towards was future proofing. So I said, well, since you're doing all this database stuff and you're getting really good at it, how about you learn how to, I guess, translate those skills over into supporting SQL in the cloud? And not just SQL in the cloud, right? Because now we know that people are going to use MySQL and Oracle and all the other databases that exist,
Yeah.
right? That you probably want to start finding more general knowledge so that when you do make that transition to the cloud, that you're able to actually support, it from a specific, general standpoint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense. Did you look at like any job postings out there and looked for the different certifications that were being asked for the most, or um did that have any play in it?
No, no. Microsoft does a really good job of showing you their tier structure and their paths, right? So the idea was, again, what's the general knowledge, right? What's the and sometimes the cloud service providers, they'll provide a general certification that's
Right.
actually for project managers and marketing
Yeah.
people, right? So
To
it's,
learn the verbs and
yeah,
nouns,
yeah,
like just learn the
exactly.
language.
So, it was like, we're not going to go for that one. We're going to go for that first administrator one, right? So there was like Azure administrator, right? Like
Yeah.
104 at the time or something like that. 102, 103,
They
104.
change it every
Yeah.
year.
And so after she got that one, you can see that, well, this is a prerequisite to this path and that path, right? And so since she already had SQL and database knowledge, it was kind of like, well, let's round that out, right? Like, you might want to support the web apps, right? You might want to support, the three-tiered system of having a web app, a middleware, and a database, right? And so it was like, well, DevOps is also one of those things that is becoming pretty, hot right now. So maybe, that's a path for you, because now you can learn about APIs, which is going to be important for supporting databases. You're going to learn about, microservices. So it just seemed like, a good fit, right? It was able to expound on her database experience and say, hey, now let's bring you some more of that front end knowledge, right? So that you can be like a full stack person that can kind of support, creating new services. So yeah,
Hmm.
that's kind of the path, right? Of Azure administrator, and then learning how to develop apps for Azure, and then learning how to support organizations moving their infrastructure into Azure. And if they want to change their development life cycle to a more DevOps oriented, path, you can support them from, having some of the certs that you have now and the skill set that you have.
Hmm. So do you follow that same process with yourself, I assume?
Um, no, no, not really. Generally, man, it's like, I'll see something that's interesting and something that's looks a little challenging, and then I'll just be like, I'm going for that.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of times it ends up not even supporting some of the things that I'm currently doing on a day to day basis, because I'll get a cert and realize that I couldn't even give you chapter one amounts of information on this, for where I am, because they're like, way like this is not
Yeah.
how we do things, man. We're ad hoc here. We don't do processes.
Right.
We don't do standards. Like, what are you talking about? Get in there and put out that fire. So, to me, it's all about, the future, right? Where I see myself in the future for why I go after, what I want.
Yeah. Okay. I think that makes sense. I do a bit of that as well. But I think mostly, I kind of figure out where the market is going. So, 3, 4 years ago, it's going to the cloud. There wasn't really many professionals with the cloud certifications. Um, I looked on LinkedIn and I just didn't see very many people with like the CCSP with
Hmm.
AWS certs or anything like that. It just wasn't that big at that time. It was so kind of, you know, it was still kind of growing in popularity, right? And demand. Um, and so I, kind of set out to go into that gap because I figured that's where everything was going to be going. And that's why I shot for the CCSP kind of as like my first cloud cert, first like professional level cert, you know. And so when I got that, then um, I was at a company that was going heavy into AWS, and so I decided to, start working on AWS certs, and I just started, you know, my whole mentality was that AWS certs are pretty valuable to
Hmm.
anyone's career. They're valuable in the marketplace. There's a decent amount of job postings with AWS certs.
Yeah.
So it benefits me to get an AWS cert, and it benefits my org to have me get AWS certs. And so it was an easy pitch to my manager to be like, "Hey, I want to go for this AWS cert. It falls right in line with my job duties, my job description, even. And we need it in this way in the organization." And so he was like, "Yeah, here's the card. Go do it. Like you have your own card. Go buy it." So I was able to do that, and to be quite honest, even if my company wasn't going to pay for it, I would have paid for it myself, because I wanted to do it uh that much,
Hmm.
and so I got the AWS like foundations cert. Really, like it's just terminology. You're just learning terminology and some like very broad situations of when you would use these different major AWS services. That's really all it is. It's like a weekend of studying and you can pass it. Like I have a friend that actually just studied for 2 weeks and he went and took it and passed it. He goes, "Man, that was pretty easy. I built that up to be a lot more in my head." I'm like, "Yeah, I did the same thing and I studied for like 3 months. I should have just studied for 2 days."
Yeah.
Like it was nothing. But then from there, um, kind of made a mistake, kind of jumped the gun in a big way, and I went straight for the AWS security specialty cert, and I didn't realize until like the week before I took the exam that it's actually highly, highly recommended that you do the solutions architect
Yeah.
associate first.
Right.
And
Okay.
I'm like, well, I'm already 3 weeks into studying, or 3 months into studying. The exam is next week. Let's just see what happens.
No, so yeah, hey, getting that real test is probably the best, way to actually, tell what the test is about is actually doing it. So
I mean, I passed, but it was close.
yeah. Well, I
And
mean,
man, it was hard.
that that's awesome. And the specialty, like I said, the ASA is the one that they probably referring to, but or
Yeah.
that they say to get first. But even that, I've seen people who are saying that they're studying for 1 month and getting that right,
Mhm.
or they're just using the
For solutions architect?
yes,
Okay.
or they're going to like the Udemy course. I think there's a Stefan. I can't remember his
Yeah.
last name,
Yeah.
and that sucks. But I have his course right, and so I looked at it. It's very good, right?
I just go with Cloud Guru.
Yeah, you can
for
go to
all my
Cloud
cloud
Guru.
certs. Cloud
Yeah,
Guru is so good.
I don't think that you can pass the CISSP in 1 month and or
Probably
the
not.
CCSP in 1 month with just videos, right? Because
Yeah.
there's so much content in there that's more like, first of all, they'll tell you answer. Well, what's the goal of that cert? The cert is to help you become a manager or a very high level person who helps the strategic, you know, roadmap of your organization. So you have to get in the mindset of answering this like a manager, right?
Yep.
Especially from a CISSP or a CCSP. So you'll see questions that'll pop up and they'll have multiple answers that are correct, but one might be a technical correct answer and the other one might be an administrative answer, right? And it's like, well, from a technical perspective, you're going to initially be like, oh, well, I'm doing that because that's the right thing to do. I'm a tech guy,
Yeah.
hands on keyboard. I done seen that before, etc. But actually, no, it'll be something like you get in contact with the senior executive and get the change control process started. It's like, what?
Yeah.
That's that isn't something that would immediately pop into somebody's head who's a technical, hands-on keyboard type of person. And so you have to find that balance, right? Of, okay, well, this cert is actually supposed to enable you to become a this. So therefore you should answer questions from that filter, right? That this exam is from a managerial standpoint. And I would say that's the same thing for the ISACA stuff as well, the CISM, right? CRISC, the CISA, right? If you're going to go into auditing, right? You have to answer from the perspective of what's the specialty of that actual exam, right? What is it trying to, get you to validate? So even though you might see an encryption question, right? And they'll have, AES 256 or RC4 or this or that, right? And you're like, ooh, look, some technical stuff, right?
Right.
No, it's probably the thing that's asking you to create a policy and type the word encryption somewhere in
Yeah.
the policy, right? So you have
Yeah.
to, be mindful of that.
Yeah, I think the ISC squared certs really get you prepared for like a strategic role or a manager role, and
Absolutely.
I say that those are two different things because from a strategic perspective, I view that as kind of like a lead at some organizations or absolutely an architect for more of a strategic mindset, and that manager role as well, obviously. But in my opinion, I think for like more of a manager cert is probably the CISM or the CISSP. For the
Yes.
CCSP, honestly, I felt like it was more of a strategic
Yes.
approach or a strategic mindset. And I know you have all three of those. I have never even started studying for the CISSP. I mean, shit, like I might get that in 3 years. I don't know. Like it's not even on my radar. I'm kind of dreading the process. Like I have a friend that he like graduated from his master's and then he immediately went for his CISSP, and I think he failed it like 2 or 3 times.
Okay.
I think twice. I think he failed it twice and he passed it on his third time. But he like burnt himself out because he went from, he was working a full time job the entire time,
Yeah.
got his master's, went straight into the CISSP studying. And I mean, he studied for, 6 to 8 months, failed it twice. And then he, took it a third time. And by the time he took it the third time, he's like, dude, I'm like done. I'm done. And it's been like 3 years, maybe 4 years since he did that. And he's like, man, I gotta like get my shit in gear because I burnt myself out. And I mean that's what can happen, like I mean, I'm sure you like when you took those three certs, like you took them pretty close to each other too. When you took those three certs,
Yeah.
like
Oh,
I'm sure
burnout
you
is
were done.
absolutely real. I've had times where I think the longest I went without getting a cert might have been 2.5, 3 years. Between like 2015, 2016, and 2019 was like I didn't take anything, right? I was just in security, learning fire drills, right? It was like this is all the experience I need. And
Yeah.
plus with the CISSP, they're going to put this damn 5 year requirement on me anyway. So I might as well just, learn hands on a job. I
Yeah.
was doing logarithm at the time a little bit. I was doing Nessus. I was doing all these things. And then got into management. So, there was no shortage of, activities for me, but I was absolutely dreading getting back into a certificate, hunt because, yeah, it does burn you out. You go through all that reading, all that learning, and then, once you're done, sure, people congratulate you, you congratulate yourself, you feel really good about it. But if you don't get any immediate, like, validation and or benefit of it, right? If you're going to be in a
Hmm.
position and you get three certs like that and you don't even get a nickel promotion, right? Or
Time for a new
raise.
company.
Yeah, yeah. And
Time for a
so
new company.
and so the situation is that you start to say, well, what's the point of getting all these certs, right? If
Yep.
it doesn't actually show up, for me in terms of new roles or new opportunities. I mean, sure, you're going to be awesome at your job, right? When something happens and they want you or they need you to provide, advice or guidance on what the standard should be or how you should actually do something, well, you will have a man, you have so much knowledge that you have that says that, well, industry standards says this, we should do that. We should first formulate and get a strategy. We should get a policy in place. We should set some standards, some requirements. You have all these things to pull from, right? To kind of pull your organization out of these ad hoc activities, right? Where they kind of really don't know what's the best way to move forward. But then at the same time, you have all these things and it's just kind of like, well, great. I'm everybody's go-to person now, you know, but they still want me to be a security engineer and I'm still
They're still
making
paying
this.
you the same.
Yeah, yeah. And so, you have to make sure and understand why you go into getting the certs in the first place. Are you doing this because you have a position in mind or because you want that knowledge? And for me, it was always for the knowledge because I could have changed positions, like Joe said, at any time, right? Once I got those three, I could have been like, I'm out of here, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Easy.
but at the same time, you got to have some kind of fallback, which is well, you know, my family is eating and things are okay for me. Maybe I need to go ahead and just concentrate on some other things right now to make sure mentally, right, that I'm healthy. Because if you get in the habit of just getting certs all the time, you burn out. Next thing you know, you don't want anything to do with IT or security anymore because, well, damn it, you didn't see the return on all that energy that you put out.
Yeah. Yeah. That's that's a good way to think of it. I think that's a good way to put it, man. I mean, I think that this is something that's like really lacking in the field at a lot of companies is, as a professional, I mean, we go through hell to get these certs. I mean, like getting these certs is extremely stressful. Like I don't care who you are, I don't care how much experience you have. I mean, it is stressful. And after you take that cert, and let's say you fail it, like the stress is just ratcheted up. I mean, like it's like double. It's like double because now everyone's looking at you being like, "Oh, well, now he probably can't pass it." Or, "Man, that's really hard. I don't know if he's going to be able to do it." Or, "Well, if he did it, it was the second try, it wasn't impressive. It wasn't his first attempt or anything." And, these companies are not, for the most part, they're not rewarding us for getting these certs. It's the next job that rewards you financially for getting that cert. I mean, and that's just the honest truth. And you know what? That's a real shame that companies can't do that with you staying there, that they can't like put a value, just a straight up value on a cert. If you get the CISSP, we're going to give you a bonus of 15K right there on the spot. You prove that you passed it, and we will give you 15K up front. Boom. And then if you go and get the CISM, you go get the CCSP, you go get blah blah blah. Like just go down the list. All of these certs, we give you 15K. And if you get 10 of them in a year, guess what? We're giving you 150K. Like there is no limit to it. And I know one company that's doing that. I only know one. I've only heard of one as well, like, just period. And they do it though because they want to not only, attract talent and get talent, but they want to retain talent. These companies got to remember that it's not just about getting the talent, It's about retaining the talent. If you treat your talent like shit, guess what? They'll go to Facebook, they'll go to Google, they'll go to Amazon, they'll go somewhere else that they're appreciated. I mean, just up front, like, just because you have benefits
Hmm.
doesn't mean that you're doing us a favor. Like, it doesn't. Every company has benefits.
At least, at least,
I
at
had a
least,
company
yeah,
I had a company argue with me that they were providing great benefits because they had health insurance. I was like, "Dog, your health insurance is maybe the top 50%. Like, you're not breaking top 60% or anything like that in Chicago. Every company offers health insurance, and your health insurance is kinda shitty compared to the other ones."
yeah. I think that most organizations they bank on, in my opinion, they bank on people not being ambitious,
Yeah,
right?
they do.
And I've seen it personally. Like I know places that where I worked in 2013 that if I was a if I was on that desktop team, the desktop admin two team, and there were a couple of people who was first call responders, they're still first call responders at that
Yeah,
organization after 7 years, right? And
that's
so,
bullshit.
well, I mean, they kind of okay, right? They got to a salary that they wanted, and they want to say, hey, this is funding my lifestyle, and my lifestyle isn't going to change. So therefore, this role, I'm happy with it, right? Just as long as I keep my job, I'm happy. And
I guess.
I've seen it, right? I mean, like when I was at Prometric, I was watching people take a test for a living. There are people who had been there for 8 years, right? Watching
Jesus.
people taking a test every single day of the work week for 10 hours, just watching people scratch their head, scratch their nose, fiddle around their chair for 3 to 4 hour tests. And the thing that you said that there was two things you said, but one of which was if you fail, that people start to doubt you. Hell no. I don't know who are those people, but
Man, it gets in my head.
yeah, if you're successful, you know there's failure all on that road, man.
Yeah.
Right? Failure is what you are overcoming. So if and the lady with the biggest thing was teaching her that get your fails out of the way. I don't care if you have to take this test 10 times. Now, if the test costs $800, well, damn it. I can't help you once you start failing 3 or 4 times because that's just, economically it's not viable. But for
Right.
some of these exams that are $100, if we can actually budget for it, I don't care if you have to take it 5 or 6 times. It's just about learning and growing and overcoming that, right? So, yeah, man, if you fail a test, like you could beat yourself up, yeah, but get jump back on that horse. But don't think that since you took it and you had to take it 3 or 4 times that anybody cares. I know I don't care. I would just look at you and say, man, you stuck with it, man. That's resiliency.
Mm,
That's resiliency, right? And that's a tremendous sign of character to me. It's dealing with that failure, dealing with that defeat, and coming back and saying I'm not going to give up. So, like
yeah.
I pat anybody on the back who sticks with it.
Man, you brought up a interesting point, the cost of the certs, and the one organization that really comes to mind when we're talking about cost that I really want to praise them is AWS. Those certs cost between, like, I think there's some that cost like $100, and I
Mm-hmm.
think their highest one costs 250. So 250, 300, something like that. I mean, like, I think that they're greatly underpriced. I mean, when I was looking at how much the security specialty cert was going to cost me, man, I think it cost me like 200 bucks or something. And I was expecting like 500, $600 because it's a pro level cert. It's a really hard cert. Like, you get that. I mean, like, you're recognized as really knowing AWS security. And trust me, like, just if you pass that test, man, you really know it. Um, and so I thought that I thought that their pricing model was extremely good. And then to top it all off, when you pass your first cert, they give you a discount code, like a considerable discount code, like 25% off your next cert. And so it incentivizes you to not only, go for that next cert because it benefits your career, but you're also getting a discount code that I think is valid for like 3 years or something. I mean, I don't know anywhere else that offers anything like that. I mean, that's just the whole, that's the whole, man, that it's just so awesome. I can't, I really can't speak highly enough of those certifications and their pricing. And yeah, that's what it is. I mean, the ISC squared certs, they cost $600 per attempt, which I mean, it's brutal. Not only does it add, you know, it adds so much stress to the cert when it costs that much money, because now it's like, oh man, I probably can't, pay for that in a month. Like it's going to take several months, most likely, to it's going to take several months, most likely, to save up to get that cert done. Let's see. I have to re-invite Derek here. It's a bit of a newer product, Squadcast, but I mean, like I think that it's still really good quality, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
Like the video quality, the audio quality, and yeah, audio is dependent upon the hardware, but like they do things in the background that makes it sound better and everything. And so, this radio voice of mine, that I dislike, that a lot of other people seem to like for some dumb reason, they make that voice sound even better.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Said Joe got the silky butter coming through the mic.
I'm gonna go get a contract with Sirius XM to go host something like, yeah, right.
Hey, you could just do voiceovers, man.
I don't know. If someone wants me to do a voiceover, someone better reach out, because that's not something that I know anything about.
Said, where they hire for that? But yeah, I mean, yeah, that price. I think that, and I don't know if you were still talking about that AWS,
It
and the
was,
price,
yeah.
but I think that's because they obviously want that market share, right? And
Yeah.
it is going to allow more people to get the opportunity to, get up in there, right? Because it's more affordable and it's highly popular, right? Especially with the rise of cloud. I mean, I think like on Reddit and some of the forums, I remember I haven't seen it like this since like back in the 2010, 2011, 2012 days when Microsoft was kind of like just everybody was going crazy for Microsoft search.
Yeah.
Everybody was going crazy for Cisco search, right? It was just like everywhere you went, everywhere you go, forums were just packed with people trying to figure out how to get these certs. And AWS, right? Because I was taking ISC squared CCSP and CISSP when
Hmm.
AWS really just took off.
Hmm.
And I would go to the forums just to see what people were saying and creating for, certifications. And like one forum had like 100,000 people, and like the ISC
Jeez.
squared one was like 20 or something. I'm like, what
Yeah.
the hell has happened here? I'm like, AWS is going crazy. And so I can, if you have affordable tests, right, and they make it um, a lot easier to learn the content, I think, right?
Yeah.
You can get the white papers from the AWS sites. Yeah, they just
There's so
make it.
much less stress involved with it too. Like when it's a lower cost, there is so much less stress involved with it, because, you know, like the AWS security specialist one, I think that's like 200, 250, right? And so when you spend 200, 250, yeah, it's a decent amount of money, but it's not money that will take you very long to recover, right? So like let's say you fail it and you had to retake it, you could recover that money probably in 30 to 60 days. If you fail an ISC squared test, that's 600, $700. Um, man, it's like that's not 2 months most likely of, saving, putting money away, for a lot of people that's not. And so like there's a lot more on the line
Yes.
when you take an ISC squared test. With AWS, personally, for from my perspective, that same stress with that I had with ISC squared, specifically around the price, never existed with AWS tests. Like never. Not it didn't even cross my mind. It was like $200. Like, who cares? Like, yeah, like yes, I make more money than most people, but like I take myself back to when I was making $45,000 a year in a position that I was trying to break into security in, and I take myself back there, and I think, would this number amount, would this, $250 cert, would this be really difficult on me if I failed it? Would it be really difficult for me to just cough up the money again? And it wouldn't have been. And the reason why it wouldn't have been is because it's a lower cost cert, so that stress is a bit more removed. But shit, man, 600, $700 for ISC square cert. I mean, like their certs are worth it. They're absolutely worth it, and I think that they are abundantly worth it when you change jobs. I'm not telling everyone go get certified and then go change jobs, and that's not my career recommendation for anyone, right? But some people need it. But
Yeah.
um you see that big bump when you change jobs. Like just point blank, it doesn't even compare. Your current job isn't going to increase your salary by 30, 35 grand because you have a cert. But guess what? You go out on the marketplace, depending where you're at right now, and they absolutely will. Another company will absolutely give you that bump, and you don't have to tell them anymore how much you make currently. You could say whatever, but man, they absolutely will. And I do want to touch on this one topic right before we end because we're coming to the end here. There are people out there that get every single certification that is available for a vendor. And I think both of us have the same perspective of this, but I just want to say this. Unless you plan on being a subject matter expert on everything of Azure or Microsoft or AWS, I mean, an absolute expert, like you should be working for that company basically. Unless you plan on doing that, don't do it. You're going to waste your time, you're going to waste your money. And whenever I see that on a on a resume, to me, honestly, when I see that, I see someone that may not have very good direction, may not have, very good um just skills or mindset to know where they're going. Because what are you trying to do with all those certifications? Like at some point you're not getting new knowledge.
Yeah.
Like and I know that that sounds weird to some people because it's like, "Oh, well if I go and get this AI cert or whatever for AWS, that's new knowledge." Of course there's going to be new material in that. But guess what? If you get the solutions architect cert, associate level, then you get the pro level, right? How much is the gap between that and the network specialist cert or the security specialist cert? Like how much is the gap? I don't know, maybe 20% difference, but that 20%, can you not, if you were confronted with that 20% situation in your career, could you not Google it or look it up or think in your experienced, well-versed mind, and figure out that answer? Like you probably could. And the money difference that you're going to see, like I've seen people on LinkedIn that they have over 30 certifications. They have everything that Oracle offers, Alibaba, GCP, Azure, and AWS, and some others that I've never even heard of before or seen. And they go out there and they tell people, go triple your salary. Go like you do this and you're gonna triple your salary. I'm like, dude, one, if I could triple my salary like that, one, you don't
Wow.
know how much I make. And two, what are you tripling from? And
Yeah.
there's people in the comments on there that will say that, like, well, what are you tripling from? Are you tripling from like 40K? Because yeah, then yes, you will triple your income,
Sure.
but you could triple it and get two of those certifications. Like, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. There's a
man,
law of diminishing returns. right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Especially with certifications. Man, I'm telling you, like when I see people with like 30 certifications, it's just like, dude, I don't I, I don't know. Good on you for getting them. Absolutely. I mean, that's a struggle. You spend a lot of money, but doesn't necessarily tell me much about you other than you really want to get these certifications.
You know, it like as somebody who I think I was around what I think 15, maybe 4 years ago. I
But
haven't
you're not
gotten that
keeping them
many.
all up to date though,
Well, that's because I realized
right?
that it's there's there's better
So,
things I can do with my time.
so there's a difference.
Yeah,
There's a difference, and I really want to call that out. Over your career, yeah, you're probably going to have 30 different certifications
sure,
over your whole career.
sure.
But these people that I'm referring to
All
have
active.
30 certifications and they're keeping them all up to date.
Yeah.
So literally, like I was talking to the guy and he said, literally every 2 weeks, I am retesting for for a certification. Maybe it's a brand new certification, or maybe it's just one that I already have that I have to renew. He is in a constant state of studying,
I
constant,
I mean you may just be seeing somebody who has like compulsive,
maybe.
addiction, right? I mean, people have we all like people have addictions for all kinds of stuff. And
Don't give me don't not give me coffee in the morning.
yeah, yeah, so
Don't do
you're
it.
so if it just so happens that that person's trigger happened to be also with the certs, then you're going to see that play out. But like you said, right, you'll also see that well, they're not really putting it to use. They're just accumulating all this, but they aren't really like the the head architect at that vendor. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, maybe it would make sense, right? Like you need to be developing a damn platform going forward. Then if you got that many certs and that platform inside and out. And so yeah,
Yeah.
I can see your point with that. And then you got people who, just got into it and just they're doing it to shut people up, or they're doing it to show people how intelligent they are, or that they don't have any limits. But yeah, it doesn't make sense after a certain amount of time. But like I said,
Yep.
it ain't outside hitting people in the head with bats. So I
Right.
say, hey, well, go ahead and do what you got to do, man. I would love to work with somebody like that, because hell, to me, I'd be like, hey, man, you got the answer to this? Like, hey, I'd be like, hey,
They better, man.
whatever questions you have, I'm gonna direct you to this guy, and I'll
Yeah.
just sit back and say, do what you do, baby. But
They, they
I
better
would
be able to answer it all
I
with
would
all them
love to.
certs.
I would love to
And
see it. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I would love to see it. The smartest guy I knew didn't have like any certs. He was an
yeah.
electrical engineer, right? And he used to work on robotics and shit in his off time. And that dude was brilliant.
Yeah.
And when we used to bring up certs and stuff, he's like, yeah, yeah, eh. Like it was just like, why, why? And I'm like, well, you don't have the problems I have, right? I have to prove to people that I can fucking plug a USB in, right? It's like, so for me, I have to go get a certain USB hardware,
It's like,
plug
look,
in
you're already a genius. All right.
shit.
I am dumb. I am really dumb. I am trying to get a little bit better.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get less dumb every day. You're already a genius. We're not talking apples to apples right now. We're talking you're a skyscraper and I'm a little ant.
Yeah.
Like
Come on, you were building robots when you were 8 years old and
this guy
fucking
over here, 8 years old. I was trying to figure out how to not drown in the swimming pool. What you talking about?
shit.
8 years old,
I was
man.
setting the kitchen on fire trying to make my first grilled cheese. Shit.
Shit.
Got the
That ass
flames.
whooping must have been
Oh yeah.
insane. I know I would have gotten an ass whooping for that.
Say, boy, how the hell you set the house on fire trying to make a grilled cheese?
You think we could just get another one of these? You can't
start
get another house like that.
start watching the Bears and forgot what quarter it was. Grilled cheese was on the damn stove for 15 minutes. But yeah, I mean, like, hey, some people need all the search they can get, man. Like, you need a certain on how to use this stove. Um, but yeah, it's a trip to see people who have 30 and 40, and don't get caught up and
And they
think you got to have
maintain them.
yeah, don't think you have to get a certain amount. Um, just get the ones that's going to help you in the path you want to go down, and maintain the ones and let the ones fall off. I let all my Cisco stuff off. And what was crazy is that, dude, I was thinking about this for a long time. I was on forums like, I got 4 Cisco certs that are going to expire in the next 3
Mm,
months. All I have to do is take the T-shoot again, right? And all of those will repeat, but I don't think that I'm going to need them. And it
yeah.
was that question, right? Like, do I go and renew these things or do I just let them fall? And I just started letting stuff fall, man, because I'm like, whatever. That was a different time. And if I need it, I'll go back and get them again, but I doubt it.
I think along with that is, so the whole point of getting certs is to really progress your career. And they absolutely do that. And so, you know, you get a cert like your Cisco certs, right? And they get you to a certain level that you expected to be at, that those certs took you to. Well, once you're at that level doing that job and whatnot, you have that information. You have command of that information. And so renewing those certs only makes sense if you plan on staying at that level. If you don't plan on going anywhere else, doing anything else, learning anything new, really, though renewing those certs makes sense. But if you plan on, getting those certs, getting getting into that level. So, like, let's say you want to be ethical hacker, you get the CEH, you land the job as ethical hacker. Maintaining that cert of CEH no longer really makes sense because you're already at that level. You're getting the hands on practice. And so when you go interview for your next job, right, you should rather have the certs that are required by that next job. Maybe you're trying to be a red team lead or something like that, right? So you go and get your OSCP. You have your CEH, you go get the OSCP, you land the lead red team role because you have your OSCP, but you don't need to renew that CEH, right? Because it doesn't make sense anymore. Like
Right.
it's a step below, maybe 2 steps below where you're at right now. And so it doesn't make sense. But at the time when you were doing the jump in your career, it made sense to have that cert. And so that's what you got to be thinking it as. Like you don't have to renew everything that you get. Once you get that cert, I mean, it certifies the knowledge that you have. You definitely have a certain, bare minimum level of knowledge to get that cert. And that's the most important thing,
Yep.
right? You got to use these certs to grow your career, to expand in your career and go into the next level that you want to go into. That's what these certs are for. And that's how you got to think of it. Like I don't renew my security plus. Like,
Yeah.
I think it expires this year. I'm not renewing that thing, man, unless they give it to me for free. Like they let me renew it last time for free. If they let me renew it again, I'll take the test on a whim. I'm not studying for it. I'm not putting any more time into it other than what it takes me to answer those 60 questions or whatever it is. And I mean, I hope I pass that thing.
Or,
But I mean, it'll expire. I don't care about it.
fortunately, some of these certs have the CPE program where you can, or the
Yeah.
continuing education, where you can actually renew it by getting other vendor certs.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, like my Security Plus fell off in that window. I told you about that 2.5 year window when I hadn't got anything, but before then, I was able to kind of put some certs that I had gotten there, and it was actually able to renew it, right? And so
Mm.
that's fortunate, right? When you can actually have your cert renewed because you're staying up on the webinars and you're reading articles or you're writing books or you're participating in projects or you're just doing some of the training that is associated on their websites like ISC squared. They have modules that you can actually watch and answer questions, and they'll give you 5 CPEs for going through a SDLC or application security course or a how to secure cloud environments, and they make it available on their site. They also make available blogs and
Mhm.
a newsletter, right? It's like a magazine, a monthly magazine where it's like 10 pages. It's not that big, and you can read that entire thing in like a day and answer like give a summary about what it is that was in it, and they'll give you a CPE, and you get
Mm.
enough CPEs, and you have 3 more years on that CISSP. And I went to the I can't remember the name of it, but it's like every September or October, November. It's the ISC Square Conference. I can't
Right.
remember, but I went to it at the end of 2019. At the end of 2019, and it was 40 CPEs for that conference. And
Wow.
I took the security architecture training course there. So that was another handful for me, but I was able to get all of the CPEs I needed in the first 13 months that would renew my actual CISSP and CSSP for the first
Yeah.
3 years. So everything I'm doing now in terms of CPEs is just icing on the cake and to stay, present with my information. But it's better than having to study again for the CISSP and crunch for an exam that, you know,
Right.
if you can show that you're keeping the knowledge, present, then it's a lot better.
Yeah. Well, it's probably time to start wrapping it up here. Is there anything that we missed? I mean, we'll probably, in all honesty, we'll probably do another one just focused around like different CompTIA certs, and maybe I'll even take a few. Maybe I'll take like the Cloud Plus, and I
Yeah.
won't take the Network Plus. I'm not. I just can't. Um, I just can't. Maybe I'll take the CASP or CASP. That difficult one that they have. I think. But we'll do another where we talk about other vendors and other certifications that we have and things like that. I think that this is really valuable content that a lot of people in the field, want to learn about, want to hear about because they're doing it too. They're going through it. So
Yeah.
thank you guys for listening. As always, our support has been insane. Thank you to our Reddit subreddits, that really allow us to put this stuff out there in their forum and allow us to just get viewers because we're here to help you guys.
Yep.
So thanks guys for all the support. We really appreciate it. I think there's a new link on our website for the podcast where if you want to buy us a coffee, you could do that. That would be cool. I mean, like I said, like I like my caffeine. I need it. I don't work before I get caffeine in me, so that's always good. But thanks guys. We will talk to you in a couple days again. See you.